Hello and welcome to Socially Democratic, a weekly centre-left political and cultural podcast that will delve into the progressive issues of the day and the people leading them from both home and abroad. Hello, my name is Stephen Donnelly and I am the former Assistant Secretary of Victorian Labor, but now the Director of Dunn Street. And thanks for joining us today. This is our very first podcast. It's something I've been planning on doing since I finished up at Victorian Labor, and I'm really excited by what we've got in store. We've got a great guest on today, but we'll also have some wonderful guests over the course of the coming months. This is going to be a weekly podcast, and I really hope you guys certainly enjoy it. Please subscribe to the show so you can get each week's episode downloaded to your phone, whether you use Apple Podcasts or Google Play or whatever type of phone you've got. Just make sure you subscribe and give us a rating and leave a comment, and that helps us boost the listenership on Apple and Google and all those other things. This podcast actually is presented by Dunn Street, which is my new campaign agency. It's a modern campaign agency that's dedicated to using data-driven grassroots organising to build winning campaigns and make the world a better place. So if you're in business or in politics or you've got an issue-based organisation, Dunn Street connects people that share the same values and organises them to achieve common goals from the ground up. So to find out how Dunn Street can partner with you, hit us up at dunnstreet.com.au, and don't forget to follow Socially Democratic through all the various social media channels by actually looking up Dunn Street. Dunn Street's on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram, and on LinkedIn for those people who are over 35. Today we had a great guest on, Josh Burns, who is Labor's candidate running in the federal election for the seat of Macnamara, and we taped this one on a Sunday afternoon, and here is the conversation that I had with Josh today. Josh Burns, the candidate for the seat of Macnamara. Welcome to the podcast.
Very, very good to be here, Stephen. Very pleased to be here.
You're the inaugural guest, the first of hopefully many.
What an honour. This is going to be a long, successful show. I can feel it, and I'm very, very pleased to be the first guest.
Absolutely. You and I over the years have been talking about doing a podcast. I wanted to get you on when I was at Pot on the Hill. Yeah. But I just didn't think that I could justify an hour's full of NBA talk. I pitched it, and it didn't seem to,
I also, a lot of my friends in the Labor movement like to make sure that my ego stays within check. And I think if I would have come on your show, I would have perhaps received too much criticism from some of my friends. So
yes, particularly being a Labor staffer.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, but you're not now.
No, I'm not.
You're running.
I'm running.
You're seeking public office.
It's exciting. It's exciting. There's not many times in your life where you truly give every ounce of what you've got into something, and when you do, it's bloody frightening because you put everything on the line, but it's also been one of the most fulfilling and worthwhile experiences. And for me to have the privilege of being a Labor candidate to run for the federal parliament in a seat that matters so much, it's to have the party put that faith in me and to have people put that faith in me. It's been brilliant.
Look, I've always admired people who have put their hand up and seek public office, and people come to it from so many different ways. There's always that traditional kind of, I guess what we call the Labor hack that, basically since they were born, they've wanted to be a politician, and you can just tell them they've done everything they need to do.
Yeah.
And there's others that sort of accidentally step into it. Did you see yourself ever putting your hand up for elected office at any stage, or is this something that just has developed over time?
Honestly, it was my ambitions in politics weren't so much to be the MP, but rather I always throughout university and throughout my young adult life wanted to be involved. I wanted to have a role. I never really set out to get a particular role. It was more just to be involved in some way or another. Before politics, I worked for a publishing company, and it was good work. I was living a very comfortable life. I got a nice salary and all of the rest of it. But it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And I guess the question was that I asked myself was, do I start again, and do I get involved in something where I can be passionate about? And the labour movement was always that thing that I wanted to be involved in. And now I'm lucky enough to be living it.
You're contesting in the seat of Macnamara, which is formerly known as Melbourne Ports, and has been in Labor's hands, for want of a better word, since Federation. And Michael Danby, someone you and I both know, we've both worked for Michael at some point in our lives, was the former member, has been there since 1998.
98, yeah, 21 years.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
Michael's those who know Michael, incredibly colourful character, certainly controversial at times. But what kind of legacy does he leave behind?
I think Michael's one of the unique people in Parliament where he genuinely is a person of principle, where he is a true social democrat, where he is an old school Labor person, and in some ways has never. I think one of the things that Michael leaves behind is he's one of the few people who really are the antithesis, the complete opposite of what we're seeing in politics right now. Around especially with the rise of Trump and the rise of the populist movement across the world and the Western world. Michael is not that person. Michael is a person where he will stand up for principle and fight on the principle of issues, regardless of how popular or unpopular that position is. Yep. And that over time has caused him to have a lot of people who have stood against him and who have taken issue with what he's said. But ultimately, in politics, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. And I think Michael has been one of those rare beasts in the Australian Parliament where it doesn't matter whether you agree with him or disagree with him, you know where Michael stands on an issue. And I think that is a really important aspect of political life, especially now, where we're seeing the complete opposite, where where you sort of think and look at many of the political figures around the Western world right now and go, where is this coming from? What principle is guiding you? Are you just giving us what we want to hear, or is there something that's actually driving this belief?
What principle guides you then? So if you are successful on May 18 and become a new member, what are the principles that will guide you in terms of the path that you want to create for the people of Macnamara, as it's called now?
Well, I think like many people in the Labor movement, my story is one of migration, where in Australia we were able to create social mobility through the policies of the Labor Party. My grandfather left school when he was 14 years old, and he went to work as a pastry chef. He took up an apprenticeship, and he never had the opportunities that my father and my auntie had by living here in Australia. And I think the principles that guide me in my time in politics or what I want to achieve is to make sure that we're protecting that social mobility that we have in this country, that we're protecting the access to opportunity in this country. And I think, for the first time, we're seeing a rise in generational inequality in Australia. And if we don't have social democratic movements, and if we don't have a situation where the Labor movement is countering and making sure that there is opportunity for people, we're going to lose it, and we're going to become a more Americanized society. And we're seeing it, whether it's becoming, whether it's the examples of much more expensive university degrees, the universality of healthcare being withered away. There are a number of different policies where it's becoming less fair in this country, and I think we need to be making sure as a movement and organisation that we're constantly guided by the fact that if you're an Australian, then that gives you access to opportunity, and that means that you get a chance to do something and to be something in this country and have that social mobility. And that's something that, unless we protect it, unless we fight for it, it's going to go.
In order to do that, you'll need to get elected and become the representative for this new seat. It's an interesting seat, Macnamara. A seat known by some as the Bagel Belt because of its large Jewish voting population in the sort of the eastern half of the electorate around Caulfield and the like. But it's got quite variable demographics when you look at it. It's one of the most wealthiest Labor seats in the country in terms of income, high transit rental population in that sort of St Kilda and Elwood area. Port Melbourne, which was the old working class party electorate's now been replaced by AFL players and their wives.
Yeah.
And then sort of Albert Park in the middle, sort of the old Greek communities. And then where I used to live for a long, long time in South Bank, with that huge kind of rent apartment lifestyle where there really isn't a community because you don't know anyone. You might know one or two people on your floor, and that's kind of it, right? How do you communicate to in a campaign sense? How do you communicate to that kind of diverse demographic set of people?
That's a really good question.
I only ask the good questions, Josh.
It's with some degree of difficulty, and a lot of hard work. I think Macnamara is in order to communicate with people, you have to understand sort of what drives them and what issues motivate them. Because I think in order to be able to connect with people, you really have to know where they're coming from. And I think Macnamara is one of those places where there's really not one thing that fits all. You have, as you say, some of the extreme wealth in places like Albert Park, which is possibly the most expensive real estate per square metre in Melbourne. And then you've also got a huge public housing population that need protection. You've also got a young transient population in St Kilda. And you've also got, obviously, a large Jewish population. You've got a large LGBTIQ population. Overall, I think there are some themes that people have. I think it's quite an ambitious electorate. I think people, on the whole, are quite well educated. They're driven. They're people who enjoy living in the thrust of the inner city. They've come into this area, especially in St Kilda and Port Melbourne and South Bank and Windsor and Elwood. They're really great places to live. They're really vibrant. And I think one of the things that we're talking to people about is about, people do think about what they want for the country, what they want for the society that they live in. They are thoughtful, intelligent, ambitious people. And so we're talking about what sort of country are we going to create together, and what sort of society do we want to be creating together, and how are we going to achieve this together, and how we communicate that message. Well, that's sort of the art of politics, but it is certainly important to be making sure that we're constantly aligning ourselves with people and listening to people. And I've been amazed at how many people think about what they want and how they want to help shape the world around them, and what their vote means for them. Now, whether it's to do with the environment, whether it's to do with schools, whether it's to do with fairness, around a whole range of issues, people are thoughtful and people are engaged. And I have found that in Macnamara is that people are absolutely engaged in this electorate, and they're watching this campaign closely.
You worked in the Premier's office for a number of years with Daniel Andrews.
Yep.
And just last November, obviously, he was re-elected with a resounding confirmation by the people of Victoria with an excellent campaign. What makes Daniel Andrews and his leadership style so successful?
Well, so I remember the first time I met the Premier. He was actually the leader of the opposition, and we were at the South Caulfield branch meeting, joint branch meeting, because he's the leader of the opposition. A bit of respect. and it was at someone's home, bloody freezing night on a Tuesday night, and he came and spoke. And I remember asking him a question. I'd never met him before. I'd sort of seen him around. And he spoke with conviction, he spoke with purpose, and I immediately had a sense that, wow, this guy's the real deal. And I think that when no one else thought that Daniel was going to be the Premier that he is, it was clear even at the very first time I met him that he believed it. And he believed that he, with hard work and with conviction and with purpose, he would get there. And it was clear to everyone who was there that night, and everyone who he connected with over the first campaign, and then obviously over the 4 years in government. Daniel Andrews is one of the few people who, he didn't build Rome in a day. He did the hard work over a long period of time, and he is a person who believed in himself and who backs himself and who listens to others, but ultimately stands up for what he believes in, and he has real authenticity, and I think people really respect that.
And that's a key word, I think, in leadership that you just picked up there. Authenticity. I think people in the electorate are looking for authentic leaders. And Australians can smell bullshit a mile away. And politics does tend to have a lot of people in there sometimes.
Oh, yeah, there's a healthy amount of bullshit in politics.
And it attracts those people who are good at bullshitting, you know.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a young bloke, my mates at school would say, Stephen, you want to get involved in politics because you know how to talk a lot of shit. And it just to annoy me when people would say that, I go, what? Because I'm using maybe long words, or I've got opinions that go beyond who's going to win the footy on the weekend. But Daniel has authenticity. And I've travelled interstate, and when Daniel first got elected, people would say to me, how the hell did Daniel Andrews get elected? Like, they look at him and they see, you know, this nerdy-looking bloke with glasses and, you know, he's tall but a bit sort of hunched over and stuff. How is that an attractive proposition to the electorate? But people see through that and listen to what he says, and I'm about to do his cliche and do what he says. But he does. He's always said, I'm going to do these things and then deliver on that. And I think that's interesting from a leadership perspective. How much does that influence the way that you want to behave when you get into Parliament?
I think one of the things that Daniel also has done and said and convinced people over the time is the reason why he wants the job and why he wanted to be the Premier and why he works so hard in politics. And you often hear him use phrases like, and we were given the greatest gift and we were given the ultimate privilege. And you can tell that he's not there in order to exercise power. He's there to do things and to get things done and to have this, to use the job to do something. And that's got to be a driving force. And I think, to be frank, it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have underestimated Bill Shorten over a long period of time, because of the way that they may interact with him in a particular media interview or whatever. But ultimately, Bill understands something that that has always been apparent, and the reason why I think he's had electoral success so far, and why I believe he's going to be the Prime Minister in only a couple of weeks, is because Bill understands a basic principle of politics, is that people, while they have opinions on leadership and personality, ultimately what they care about is what does this politics, what does this election mean for them, and how is this political story affecting them and their family and the things that they care about. And for Bill, it's never been about Bill. It's always been about the party, the movement, and getting things, putting forward a plan for Australians. And I think Daniel has been able to successfully identify that, or been able to successfully articulate that politics is about doing things. And I think Bill will ultimately be successful because it's never been about Bill. It's always been about what's the movement and what's the Labor government going to do for people.
You're a young person running in this election. I don't want to say, knowing people who have got elected into Parliament in the past who are young, and define young, I think they hate it because they don't want to be typecast as being, the young person. I call it the Natasha Stop the Spoil curse. They don't want to be seen as, I'm just the politician for young people. But you are young. And there are a number of people that are putting their hand up at this election for Labor in winnable, contestable seats that are young. Annika Wells is another one up in Queensland.
Great candidate.
Organised a fundraiser for you and Annika a while back. And I'm actually wondering, are you getting these kind of questions from a media standpoint about your youth and what you bring to the table?
I think that my age is a real asset in this election. I think that people certainly. I think this election, people are looking for change, and ultimately also I think that young people need a voice in the federal parliament, and I hope that if I am elected, that I carry with me the views and the opinions and the needs of young people, and it's something the Labor movement has to be conscious of. It's something the Labor Party has to constantly be thinking about, is what do young people care about and what do young people...
What do you think they do care about?
I think that, like we've never seen before, we have a younger generation who is as connected to environmental issues and the welfare of our planet than ever before. Young people are in tune with the needs of the environment, and I'm not just sort of the political big issues we're seeing today. I think we're going to see a generational change of more and more young people moving away from or moving towards things like plant-based proteins, sustainable farming, a sustainable way of using agriculture. I think that it's going to affect consumer patterns. I think it's going to affect the way in which people purchase goods and products. I think young people are going to be, we've got a real opportunity to capitalise on new industry in tune with new generations, because internationally we're seeing a massive changes around the way in which younger people in the next generation are purchasing products, but that can also be extended to things like recycling, the use of plastics, what are the footprint that we're leaving behind right now, and I've been amazed at how much young people and school kids really care about how we are looking after our environment and how we're looking after the sustainability of our planet, because they know that they're the ones who are going to be here for a long time. So,
yep. Do you think Labor's doing enough in that respect from a policy setting when it comes to the environment?
I think Labor has the most ambitious and the most comprehensive environment policy in the history of any incoming governments, to the point where it's going to cause... we're already seeing sort of the start of some of the nervousness in parts of our organisation about how we're going to transition away from it. And I think that nervousness in some of the old industries is really healthy, because that's when we're at our best, is when we're looking after the welfare of workers. But ultimately, we are going to have to confront this, and we are going to have to confront moving away from an industrial age where we have done serious damage to our planet, to an industrial age where we're thinking about it more conscientiously. And the Labor Party has always been a movement that's been able to adapt, and a movement that's been able to, from a policy sense, reform our country and make it better. And we're going to have to rise to this challenge, and we are rising to this challenge right now.
Do you think that young people's voices are being heard? And I'm wondering, two parts of this question: are they not being heard because we're not talking to them about the things that are important to them, so they're disengaged, or are we just using the wrong tools? Like, are we talking to them in the wrong way? Like, and the way social media plays a big role in this as well, and it keeps on changing every 20 minutes.
Absolutely, and I think that while perhaps there is an engagement on certain issues, the attention of people, not just young people, is fading, and it's becoming more transient and more flippant. And to get to break through some of the noise, we have so much noise travelling around us right now. To break through it is a really difficult thing, which is why I think conversations that we have with people is becoming such a powerful political, or it is a powerful political tool, because it sort of breaks that cycle of, if we're relying just on digital and ads and whatever, like, people see all of that all the time. I think ultimately people still crave a conversation. People still crave, and they trust people when they when they meet them, and they get a sense of who they are and what it feels like to be around them, and what they believe and their passion and all of that. So, yeah.
Are you just saying that because I'm here?
Absolutely. I'll say anything because you're here. I'm on your show. No. I really believe it. I mean, some of the most inspiring parts of this campaign has been when you just, every door you don't know who's behind the door, and some doors you get told, well, I'm not interested. Have a great day. And some people you know.
What's been your best conversation you've had? Or one that's walked away and surprised you and you've sort of said, hadn't thought about that.
There was, I remember there was a small house in Albert Park, I think it was, a few months ago, and it was a pretty frail older lady, and she came to the door, and she said, I explained, I said, I'm Josh, I'm the Labor candidate, and she said, I've been just wanted to let you know that I'm not a wealthy person. I've been in this house for 40 years. It's the only thing I own. I rely on my franking credits. I don't have any kids. it's just me, but you need to go away and do this policy, and you need to stick with it, because I believe in what this country has given me, and I believe in the movement. I believe in creating opportunity for young people, and even though it's going to hurt me a little bit, you need to keep going, and you need to stay true, and don't forget that there are people out there who care about our society and who care about playing our role and doing our bit. And it was one of the most simple and inspiring messages of someone who just said, you know, I'm here to be a part of a movement of change. I'm here to be a part of making our country a bit fairer. I get it. And even though it's going to hurt me, you need to stay strong. So conversations like that and small, it stays in your head. You keep going. You keep putting in the energy and the effort. And yeah, it was encouraging.
I went to your campaign launch that was at the ESPY a couple of weeks ago. You got the Gershwin room. Yeah. Very iconic.
Yeah, it was a good night.
Yeah, pulled out all stuff. But it was a good night. Over 400 people. It was packed in there.
Yeah.
Now, I've been around Melbourne Port's campaigns for a long time. I was the bloody campaign manager in 2004.
Yeah.
I can't even recall the campaign launch. I think it was almost like an fish and chip shop in Elwood or somewhere. Anyway, we didn't have.
Could have been a Monarch's Cakes.
Yeah, it was something like that. You know, I tell you what, we didn't have 400 people rock up to that one. The energy in the room that night was huge.
Yeah.
And such diversity and so many young people. And my sources on the ground also tell me that the Macnamara campaign from the field organising side of things, that's one of the biggest volunteer bases in the country. What has been the secret of your success to empower so many people to get involved in the campaign and keep them coming back? Because it is so crucial that you have hundreds of people going out and talking to people on the doors every day.
If it was just me, I would not win this election, but it is a team effort. And, you know, I think you use a really important word of empower. I had a conversation. I've got a core group of campaign people who are, you know, about 15 people who are, you know, putting in a massive effort in this campaign. And I said to them, my role in this campaign is to lead us and to be the candidate. But ultimately, if you're going to be a part of this central team, you need to have one thing, and you need to believe that this is your campaign, and this is, you know, that you need to invest in it, because this is not my campaign, this is ours, and this is our movement's campaign, and we need to do this together. And whatever your role is, whether you're organising our volunteers, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're you know, doing our media, doing our social media, whatever your role is, or whether you just come in once every couple of weeks, I think that, and the thing I've been so proud of people is that people have they want to win, not because they want, you know, me to succeed or whatever. They want to win because we want to win this seat. We know how important it is for our movement, for our country, and people themselves have put into this campaign and want to win it for themselves as well. And when you do that, when you have that situation where people buy into it and care about this seat and get to take ownership, well, they put in, and it's been one of the most amazing things to have people turn up and put in a crazy amount of effort for our campaign. And if we are successful in a couple of weeks, it will be because of that. It will be because people have made it their own and have owned this campaign, and it's great to be a part of it.
I missed the debate that was on a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you've had heaps of them, but there was one particular
We've
one.
had 8 debates in Macnamara.
Right, yeah, exactly. What is it? When I was in Wellington a couple of years ago, I worked on the Wellington mayoral campaign, and there was Melbourne Cupfield running, and they had debates like every second night. And by the end of it, I mean, I'll tell you one thing, I knew all the bloody issues that were going on for the people of Wellington, New Zealand. But I was like, enough of the debates already, because it was the same bloody questions every time.
Yeah.
You're probably sick of it. But in this particular debate, your Liberal opponent has made headlines on a number of occasions for all the wrong reasons. Teachers in private schools are far superior than those in the public sector. She's reported to have said that barren leaders lack empathy. Chloe Shorten is a pig. A whole bunch of things that she said. But the one that generated discussion was her remarks at this particular debate I'm talking about, which was it in Glen Ira?
It was at Glen Ira Town Hall.
Yeah, early in the month, where she questioned your commitment to Zionism because you didn't have a mezuzah on your campaign office door. Baffling that it is. I'm not even going to dignify all of those crazy remarks that she said at the debate. But what I do want to ask is, a genuine question that should have been asked of both candidates, and I guess the question was, what does Zionism mean to you, was the question that was prompted from the floor. Then she gets up and yells at you that you don't have a mezuzah on your door.
I took a left turn and...
Yeah. Didn't see that coming. How important is Judaism to you, and how does it define who you are?
It's a really good question. Another good one. You're on...
Yeah.
Two. That's two. No. I've all four of my grandparents are Jewish, and obviously my parents are Jewish. And for me, Judaism and being Jewish is something that it's inseparable to who I am, and I'm proud of my history. And of course, my family's story is like many migrants, Jewish migrants, is that there's a portion of it that aren't here today because of the Holocaust, and there's this sense of determination and pride, and being proud to practice your Judaism wherever you are. And Australia has been a place in my life where it's been an amazingly... Michael Dam used to call it the Golden Medina, which is like the golden age for Jewish people. And this is our home, and we've done very, very well here. But it's not something that I necessarily want to mix too much with my politics, but certainly something that helps define my values of empathy for other people, of thinking about the world. There's a great phrase in Judaism called tikkun olam, which is healing the world or repairing the world, and I think that's a great value. And my family's story is inseparable to who I am, and it's led us to Australia, and Australia ultimately has been a place that we've been able to lead a great life, and I think a part of that is being free to be who we are, where we are, and that's something that we'll continue to hold on to.
Do you, being free to practice your faith or just be who you are and where you are, do you think that's becoming harder lately? Like, the statistics are showing that there is a rise in anti-Semitism in Australia. Do you find that on a personal level that you've noticed that, or certainly experience of others in the community?
I hadn't experienced the underbelly of anti-Semitism until I became a candidate. There was one sort of incident where there was a British conspiracy theorist who wanted to come to Australia, and I ran a fairly public campaign to have his visa blocked.
Who was that?
David Icke,
Right.
British conspiracy theorist, who runs a whole range of pretty dark conspiracy theories about Judaism and about lizards and whatever.
Right.
He's nuts. And we were successful. In the end, his visa was cancelled and his tour of Australia was cancelled. And he put this video up on YouTube basically blaming me for, and his supporters went bananas at me.
Right.
And and Australian people and Australians who, we're talking thousands of pieces of communication where I think we need to be vigilant, and we have to remember that there are not just anti-Semitism, but there is an underbelly in this country that if we're not united in keeping where it belongs, in a completely tight place where it's completely unacceptable to be expressing those views in Australia, then they will get bigger and they will become more emboldened. And I think the trends that we've seen in the recent months and perhaps years where I think that the far right have become more emboldened in Australia and have had grown in confidence. Even this election campaign, we're seeing swastikas drawn on candidates' faces, and we're seeing only a few months ago, neo-Nazis marching in St Kilda. We're seeing a federal senator using the really vile politics of discrimination to gain support. I hope that Australians stand against that at the ballot box and take action against that. But it is a growing phenomenon, and one that I hope that isn't a feature of my time in politics. But if it is, I will be standing against it. It's
definitely entered the mainstream media discourse, this sort of far right phenomenon, or what do you want to call it? Is it that it's always just been there, but social media has given them a platform to be heard,
organised?
Or are they on the rise? I mean, I know you probably don't know the answer to that, but what's your thoughts on that? Like,
sometimes, no matter what the issue is, the people on the fringes are often the noisiest, and I don't believe that those sorts of views represent a majority of people in Australia. I do believe that, I also think our voting system doesn't allow for it, that preferential voting means that if you don't get your first preference, well, you're likely to get someone who's sort of more amiable to you, which means that
forces people to the centre.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's a good thing in Australia, and we should be holding on to that. That we have some more moderate politics, but you can't excuse it. You can't excuse the dog whistling that we've seen from the Conservatives in this country. And when Peter Dutton says things like Melburnians are too afraid to go out to restaurants because of Sudanese gangs, finger pointing, or when Michael McCormack, the Deputy Prime Minister, says that rapists and pedophiles are going to be coming to our shores, or when the Liberal and National senators vote with Pauline Hanson on the "It's okay to be white" motion, or if the Liberal and National senators shook Fraser Anning's hand after he gave the final solution to Muslim migration speech in the Senate, like, you can't, or even in the last week, we're hearing revelations that Neil Erickson is sort of a far-right person who's had associations with, neo-Nazi personalities in Victoria and across the country, was involved in Liberal Party campaign events and recruitment events, and met up with Andrew Hastie and Ian Goodenough. I mean, it really, you can't give people a wink and say it's okay, what you're doing is okay. The Trumpian style of there were good people on both sides is just not an acceptable approach in Australian politics. And
what I can't get is, though, after the tragic events in Christchurch, in the mosques, there was a real push by the community to tell the mainstream media, you play a role in this. And there was a couple of articles written by some good journalists saying, we've got to put a hand up and say that we've not responsible, but we've facilitated this kind of conversation and these kind of views to be communicated through mainstream media, and we've got to be a bit more mindful about that. And people were kind of looking at Murdoch and his stables, and I kind of thought, maybe we've turned a corner here. And Facebook came out and said, okay, we're going to change the way that we do editorial and that kind of stuff. So there was actually some change happening. But then I felt like 2 weeks later, we just went back to how we were going before. Pauline Hanson's back on TV again.
Yeah.
She's doing her morning slots. 1 week she got some tough questions from, I don't watch morning television, but from some person. Can't remember who it is. Anyway, so a whole bunch of questions, and all of a sudden she's getting a hard time. So that's great. We're doing a better job. Pat on the back to the media. But then we go back to just running the same old stories about all these right-wing crackpots. It's got
it's not just the stories. It's also, we have the Deputy Prime Minister coming out and saying we have got more in line as a national party. We've got more aligned with One Nation than we do with the Labor Party, and did a preference deal with them, and openly boasting about, well, this is what we've got to do, and
not being called into account for that.
And he's the Deputy Prime Minister. Yeah. Like that's Scott Morrison's second high. When Scott Morrison's out of the country, he's the Prime Minister. Yeah. I think that the media, it operates in cycles. So it's a story of one day to sort of be reactionary to something like Christchurch, and then do they go back and break their old habit? Well, I doubt that very much that the media outlets are actually breaking their cycle. But ultimately, this is going to be a big feature of the election. We're seeing this will be a pivotal point in a very across the country with extreme conservatives. Is our country represented by these extreme figures of Tony Abbott and Peter Dutton, and even to a lesser extent Scott Morrison, Michael McCormack as well, or are we more progressive? Are we more moderate than that as a country? And this election will be a big test. I think Tony Abbott's in a lot of trouble. I think that some of the outdated views of the old guard in the Conservative Party and the Conservative Liberal Nationals is going to be under fire. And it doesn't matter what the Murdoch press say about it. Didn't matter what they said about the Victorian State Labor government. People make up their own mind. Do these people represent me? Yeah. And that will be a big test, and we'll know more in a couple of weeks.
We will. Before we go, I do want to talk about NBA just for a moment.
Absolutely,
because it's my show and I can do whatever I like.
You are in charge.
So, look, I know that you're a very busy man right now, so you're probably not getting enough. You're not getting a chance to really cover the NBA finals at the moment.
Yeah, it's devastating,
which is annoying. But the finals do go past March 18, so after you win, you can maybe celebrate and watch a couple of games.
Yeah.
More than welcome to come around to my place, mate. So we're in the finals right now. My team, the Boston Celtics, are down 2-1 to the Bucks. Off air beforehand, you're like, man, the Bucks, they're a good team.
They are.
They didn't look so good in game one, I would point out. Now, actually, no, before we talk about the finals, I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Are you one of those NBA fans that just likes players and doesn't pick a team? That's a big thing that's happening with the younger generation, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that. What is with that?
I'll tell you my NBA story was when I've been a basketball nut, but I was an Orlando fan because of Shaquille O'Neal.
Yep.
I was a kid. I was like 10 years old. And I've always had a soft spot for the Orlando Magic, and I was pretty devastated when Shaq got traded to the Lakers. That didn't do anything. I wasn't a Lakers fan. I was a Penny Hardaway and Shaq
kind of guy.
Yeah. And I had a Penny Guernsey, actually. Still do. And Nick Anderson, a few other champions of that team.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Horace Grant.
Yep.
And anyway, and then, so I never really had a team after that because I don't live in the States. But I that did change. I was thinking about, because I've scrimmaged against Dante Exum.
Have you?
Yeah. That was
you
cool.
do ball, don't you? And
I can play.
You're still playing right now, right? Apart from
I'm slower and older and get significantly less far off the ground than I used to.
Uh-huh. Could you ever dunk?
Look, there might be one period in my time where I was sort of a 23-year-old, springy character who's in a bit better nick than I am right now. Right. But
did you ever hoop at home or anything?
Yeah. Right. I'm a pretty good shooter.
Right.
I'm a pretty good shooter.
How tall are you?
6'3".
Right.
I can shoot, and I've become a better passer in my old age.
Yeah.
They used to say that when I was at under 12, I played basketball like a full forward. I just used to try and score a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm I like to facilitate.
You need to bring the other 4 players into the team.
Oh, apparently it's not just about me. Although the last game that I played, I haven't played for a couple of months because of the election. The last game I played was the A Reserve final at Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre on a Sunday night, and we played against RMIT in the grand final.
Right.
And I'm not saying I won MVP, but I may have just taken home the chocolates.
Right.
Yeah. In the Premiership A Reserve team at MSAC.
Right.
But
did you have a hoop in your bedroom as well?
Yeah, little one. Yeah, well, I used to just sit there and just throw it instead of studying.
Same.
But and now as an NBA fan, I'm a massive Sixers fan.
Right. Why?
I just think Benny Simmons, the way he plays is, he can't shoot really, but he's the way he sees the court and his ability to facilitate and control tempo. One thing in basketball is that people don't. I think the great guards, and I've played with a few people who have this rare ability to control the tempo of the game. They can either slow the game down or speed it up. And Ben Simmons has that ability to be. He is the most important piece in the Philadelphia lineup, because he can either push the speed or slow it down or find a player. He is ultimately in control. And the great point guards have that ability. Magic had that ability. Stockton had that ability. Steve Nash had that ability. But many people don't. And Ben Simmons is going to be a great of not just Australian basketball. He's already, I think, the best player Australia's ever seen. Yep. But he's going to be a great of world basketball because of his ability to control the game and to facilitate and control tempo.
It is a remarkable story at the moment, the amount of Australians plying their trade in the NBA right now.
The Boomers are possibly, for a long time, the Australian women's team have been the dominant basketball story internationally. We have an amazing women's basketball program in Australia, some really talented players. But the men's, we're now seeing that sort of compete with soccer. Some of the women's soccer and cricket team are pretty amazing in Australia.
Yeah, Matilda's
incredible.
This World Cup company, a good chance of winning the damn thing.
Incredible. But the Boomers now are this is a real golden age for Australian basketball. When you look at the depth that we've got of serious NBA talent, we have probably in the top 100 players in the world, we've probably got 10 of them, which is it's pretty amazing. So to as a product, basketball in Australia internationally has never been this good, and our players have never been this good, and I think we'll see Australia play America in a gold medal match in the Olympics or the World Champs.
There's a couple of mates of mine that are school teachers say that when the kids are not paying attention and they've got their iPads or laptops out, I have not been in a classroom since I left one. So
whatever they do in there.
I don't know what happens in there anymore. But evidently it's a lot more IT savvy than having an Apple IIe in the infotech room. And he said that when they're not paying attention, they are watching NBA Game Pass. They've all got that subscription, or they've downloaded it illegally, and they're all just sitting there watching the NBA. He said amongst young blokes, it's at the schools that he has taught over the years, he said it's huge.
It's massive. It's a great game. Like, to play, it's a great game. But, when you've got Joe Ingles, Dante Exum, obviously Benny Simmons,
Aaron Baines.
Patty
Mills is still playing.
Patty Mills is a gun. Andrew Bogut, obviously, playing with the Golden State Warriors again.
Yep.
You've got Jonah Bolden as well playing in the NBA over there. Thon Maker, of course, Maddie Dellavedova.
Yep.
You've got international brands. I mean, at the NBA level, these people are their own brand.
Yeah.
And, they're all worth $50-60 million because they're incredible athletes. And, Australian basketball is thriving right now.
What the league sort of, last question, the league in Australia, the NBL, kind of rebooted a while back, a couple of years ago, and it's become really popular again. I grew up as a young bloke as a North Melbourne Giants fan.
I was a Tigers guy.
Oh, were you? We're just never going to have the same teams, are we?
I hated the Giants.
I actually hated the South East Side Melbourne Spectres more than anyone for some reason.
Who then became the South East Melbourne Magic.
Yeah, which technically should be your team.
Yeah,
I don't think they're around anymore anyway. But
no. Well, the Tigers were based. No. The Tigers were based out of MSAC, old Albert Park.
They were. It's true.
So they were rightly. They would be the team of Macnamara.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, radio. You're going to be a great politician, Josh. Spinning that one. Anyway,
yeah.
So the NBL years ago was huge, and then it kind of just died in the arse there. But it's come back, and they're getting huge crowds.
Massive.
What's been the secret sauce?
It's a really good question. So it's actually been pockets around the country. So the Perth brand has always been really, really good. The Perth Wildcats have always been really good. Adelaide have always had a strong program. The 36ers have been consistent. Yep. Even New Zealand's had a pretty strong following. Mm-hmm. Where they lacked were the major markets were Sydney under the Kings, and then obviously Melbourne. And we'd seen over time a number of different franchises come through, and I think people couldn't get behind one team for too long, because then you'd go from the Tigers, the Magic, the Giants, the Dragons, the Titans were there as well.
Yeah.
And then a good friend of mine actually is the CEO of the Melbourne United franchise, and they sat around and they said, well, obviously the Tigers are the only ones left. We've got a great youth program in the Tigers, but too many of the old franchises, the old Giants supporters and the old Titan supporters, they're not Tigers supporters, and they're not going to get behind the Tigers.
No, I'm not.
Which is, your fault. But anyway, so what they did, which I think was really clever, and it was a big gamble, was they created this franchise called Melbourne United, and it was an idea to bring in all of the other supporters. And it worked because, they've obviously a great team. You've got some really good players, Chris Golding and a few other, Chris Boone and Casper Ware, who are legitimately good and exciting basketballers. But they unified the Melbourne basketball community, and when they start winning and they start becoming exciting, and you're competing with other big franchises, and you've got big rivalry, and then you had Andrew Bogut come into the Kings, Larry Kesselman and the NBL overall just did a great job of creating enthusiasm and energy into a national game, and Australia's better for it for having a good NBL.
Yeah, done well. One word answer. Who's going to come out of the West for the NBA finals? Sorry,
Golden State Warriors.
Right, and out of the East?
Much harder. Philadelphia 76ers.
And who will they play in the Eastern Conference Finals?
You're going to hate me for saying this. The Milwaukee Bucks.
Radio. Well, we'll see.
We will.
Josh Burns, thank you for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
Best of luck with the remainder of the campaign.
Thank you.
We're taping this on a Sunday evening. How many days to go?
Or less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
13 days.
Get knocking those doors, making those calls.
We're going to do it. Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks, mate. Really good to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Cheers.